My friends, there's a video going viral at the moment and a lot of people call it the worst guitar solo ever played on stage. In case you haven't seen it, let's take a quick look together before we discuss it further. So that's a video of Corey Feldman playing what I think is an improvised guitar solo live on stage. And with this video I don't want to point my finger and make fun of this. I think everyone that has the guts to go up on stage and perform deserves respect, and I think he's on tour with Limp Bizkit at the moment and is obviously not completely serious about being a super virtuosic guitar player. But what I would like to do is analyze this clip together with you. So I want to closely check out the technique right here, the picking hand technique, the fretting hand technique, and assume that Corey maybe wants to improve as a guitar player. And I want to share 5 amazing new exercises that are great fixes for the bad habits that you can see in this video. So let's take a closer look at the picking hand technique and fretting hand technique in this clip and see what we can find. So the first thing I immediately noticed when he was picking is that the picking hand is kind of floating above the strings like this, possibly also touching the strings while he's playing. So when you do that, especially with a distorted guitar tone, you obviously get a lot of unwanted noise. And I think that he wants to go for faster alternate picking, and that will be really difficult with a technique where the wrist is not connected to the bridge and just floating right here and possibly touching the strings. So my first big tip is moving the palm back right here so that it's positioned on the bridge. As you can see, obviously with a bit of practice that sounds much cleaner and I also feel much more in control. But what's the biggest challenge with this picking approach that I keep seeing over and over again in my student community on patreon.com/Bernd is that people who try to internalize this approach of putting the picking hand on the bridge often either push too hard, so if you have a whammy bar, that's not gonna sound great, or they anchor the picking hand and don't really move it along the strings. So they just do this and position the picking hand wrist like that all the time. So when they have to play on the low E string, they do this kind of movement. When they have to play on the high E string, they do this kind of movement instead of following the strings, which would be much more effective. So today's first and very important exercise is not only about positioning the palm on the bridge. I'm sure a lot of you do that already. It's also about following the strings, because you have to play across all strings and you want to avoid anchoring your wrist on the bridge. You want to keep the same picking angle and you want to follow the strings just like that. So this is an extremely powerful daily picking exercise for you. As you could see, you mostly have to play one note per string, which is really tricky with alternate picking. You're probably not used to that. And this will greatly increase your picking control. It will clean up your string transitions. And you will also learn to move along your pick or your entire picking hand wrist, depending on the string that you're playing on. Just one important thing before we continue. All of this is basically just a super small preview of what awaits you inside my online guitar academy on patreon.com/Bernd with the link down below. Over there, all members get immediate access to 12 online guitar courses that come with really effective practice plans and teach you awesome techniques like alternate picking, sweep picking, tapping, economy picking, and much more. From a beginner and early intermediate level all the way to a professional level in a matter of 30 days. You also immediately get access to my 5 music theory courses. Those also start with the very important fundamentals that a lot of players don't know about, even if they play for many years already. So you will finally learn to see the notes all over the neck immediately with 3 simple tricks so that you finally really know what you're doing when you pick up the instrument. And you also get access to my 4 home recording courses that will show you how to record music or guitar videos professionally at home without any fancy expensive equipment. And as you will see, there's also limited personal coaching tier. With this one you get my personal input and a personalized practice routine just for you, so that you can make the most amount of progress in the shortest amount of time possible. We just opened some new limited slots for this month because everything was completely sold out a couple of days ago. So just click the link down below in the description or in the first comment, patreon.com/Bernd. See if there's still a limited slot available for you, and I will see you in my online guitar academy on patreon.com/Bernd. I'm excited to meet you, but now let's move on to the next topic. So the next thing that I can see with the video that's really interesting is the thumb placement of the fretting hand. I actually think I've never really seen this before. So he's putting the thumb not behind the neck or above the neck like this. It's actually under the neck, like that. And while that actually looks kind of interesting, it's always cool to see something that you haven't seen before, it will lead to a lot of problems. So if you have a guitar on your lap right now, you can give this a try. It will feel pretty awkward because if you play this way, your thumb isn't really doing anything, but it actually has the most important role when you play guitar. It has to support your fretting hand fingers from behind the neck. There are two very common approaches. You can often see something like this, especially with rock or blues players. This thumb over the neck approach is really great for string bending and very expressive vibrato, and I also use it for my expressive guitar techniques. But if you subscribe to this channel, you definitely know that I go for that approach for all the technical stuff. So the thumb is usually behind my middle finger, especially in this section of the fretboard. So I'm not pressing super hard, that's not what I mean with supporting my fingers from behind the neck. I'm just gripping the neck lightly like this when I'm performing my hammer-ons and pull-offs. But with the support of my thumb, it feels so much more controlled compared to doing something like this. And if Corey would ask me for the best exercise that I currently have for this, I would show him this workout, which is quite musical and super fun. So this awesome sounding exercise is not just great for perfecting your thumb placement behind the neck, it's obviously great for your hammer-ons and pull-offs, but there's one kind of secret factor that makes this super powerful. It's that your thumb should follow your fingers as you're playing across the strings. Because you're not just performing hammer-ons and pull-offs on one strings with this exercise, you have to switch between the strings. So when you practice this awesome exercise, I want you to focus on following your fingers with your thumb from behind the neck and not just keeping it locked in one position. This should also help with releasing tension because you can't follow your fingers if your grip is too tight. And by the way, all of these workouts that I'm showing you in this video are part of my new Guitar Technique Fundamentals practice package. I made this new practice package especially for my student community on patreon.com/Bernd. And as always, the package comes with backing tracks with and without my guitar profiles with full instrumentation, play along videos at slow and also at fast tempos for your daily practice routine so that you can practice together with me. And of course, as always, you get the PDF tab sheets for this package as well. So make sure to download this awesome brand new Guitar Technique Fundamentals practice package with the link down below, patreon.com/Bernd. As I mentioned at the start, you also get access to over 20 full online guitar courses when you join over there today. So it's really a no-brainer. Just click the link down below to sign up today if you're still not part of this. But let's move on to the next topic now. So one thing I can also see in this video concerning the picking hand is something that is very, very common, and it's that the picking hand wrist looks really, really tight and tense. A lot of the picking seems to be coming from the full arm, so just going like this with your arm. And as we discussed already, this is pretty bad because you can build up some kind of speed by only working with your arm. But once you have to elegantly transition between the strings for more advanced and complex picking patterns, or you want to learn something as cool as sweep picking, it will not be possible with that super stiff full arm movement. So if Corey would ask me how to unlock the wrist for a fast, controlled and relaxed wrist picking movement, I would suggest this awesome exercise. So with this very musical sounding workout that could kind of be a guitar solo or riff, you have to move between the strings with alternate picking once again, which is quite challenging, but this time you even have to skip one string. So you're playing on the D, G and E strings and you're not playing the B string in between, which is quite tricky, especially with that alternate picking movement. And in my opinion, playing like this is completely impossible if your wrist is stiff and you only work with your arm. You really need your wrist to make those tricky transitions. So if you're still struggling with a fast and controlled wrist movement when you're alternate picking, this is the best workout for that. But let's check out the video some more up next. All right, so another thing I just noticed is that he's actually never using his pinky finger when he's fretting notes on the neck or when he's trying to fret notes on the neck. That's quite interesting because this is actually a habit that I see with a lot of advanced players as well. A lot of players really do not want to use their pinky finger, especially when they're soloing. So when they play a basic pentatonic pattern like this, for example, they would rather bend their wrist like this and use their ring finger, middle finger and index finger when they do that, instead of just doing this so using the pinky finger. And that's a shame because a lot of the most interesting guitar phrasing ideas come from using all of your fingers. It just gives you much more possibilities across the neck. So once again, if Corey would ask me about an exercise that helps with unlocking the pinky finger for more interesting phrases and getting more control out of it, I would suggest working on this one. This exercise is really cool because it trains all of your fretting hand fingers, but as you could probably see, there's a special focus on the pinky finger. So since you have to stretch quite far for some of these shapes and you have to work with hammer-ons and pull-offs and you want clean results with that, you once again really have to pay attention to your thumb placement. You want to place it in the area behind your middle finger, so not up here. This would also kind of be behind your middle finger, at least in that kind of way. But if you have it this high, it's gonna feel really awkward to play on the higher strings and to transition between the E string and B string. So not only make it sure to place it behind your fingers, also make sure to move it down so that your fingers look like this instead of that. As you can see, it's a pretty big difference when I move my thumb up and down like this. And with this exercise, you have to train different finger combinations. For example, index finger, middle finger and pinky finger. Or index finger, ring finger and pinky finger. So this one is great for you if you're not that comfortable with using this nasty finger yet. But let's check out more of the video. Let's see if we can find something else. Okay, there's actually one last thing that concerns pretty much everything that we are seeing and hearing during this live guitar solo, and it's that there's a lot of unwanted noise coming from the strings, of course. I already talked about that a little bit with the picking hand approach, where the picking hand is constantly kind of grazing or touching the strings, but most of the time this kind of unwanted noise is generated by the fretting hand fingers, because with technically untrained players, there are often some unwanted hammer-ons and pull-offs happening when they are playing. So something like touching all the other strings after a pull-off, for example. And I actually have a really cool exercise for you today when it comes to reducing that unwanted noise. And it's working with quick 16th note rests after short bursts of notes. Check it out. So with this exercise you have to learn about finger muting. So I'm just playing 2 quick 16th notes and then there's a 16th note rest. For the rest I'm lifting my finger a little bit each time, and I'm also helping out a little bit with my picking hand. And this exercise is great for testing yourself and your finger control and finger muting control, because you don't want it to sound like this, where you have a lot of overlapping notes. You really want 2 notes and then a super clean rest where you can't hear any noise at all. And practicing like this is the best way that I found of actually internalizing that string muting movement with your fretting hand fingers. So give that a try if you still suffer from unwanted noise here and there. Alright my friend, now is the time to head over to patreon.com/bernd and to download all your files for this week with the new awesome practice package that I made especially for you. You also get immediate access to 12 guitar technique online courses, 5 music theory courses and 4 home recording courses. So I'm really making this a no-brainer for you. Just click the link down below and see if there are still some slots left this week. I'm waiting for you in my online guitar academy on Patreon. Have an amazing day. Greetings from Vienna and bye bye.